What does learning a new language have to do with confidence, creativity, and compassion? Well, in this episode, we're talking about the rich connections between language, music, and the arts, not just as tools for communication, but as powerful pathways to cultural empathy, deeper understanding, and more expressive, connected lives. Make sure to check out the show notes, as we've included a couple of beautiful free resources generously gifted to our wilderness listeners by our special guest today, Jenny Moses. A few quick reminders before we begin. This week's Substack newsletter lands in your inbox on Wednesday, so don't forget to subscribe to that. And our YouTube channel is full of creative inspiration if you haven't yet explored it. Head over to the show notes for the links. And our brand new creative workshop series, Lost and Found, kicks off on Tuesday the 18th of November. I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Stacey Moon Tracy to lead our first creative workshop, who will be guiding us through gentle creative writing practices inspired by her process of writing the play Critical Care. Tickets will be going live very soon, so keep an eye out. As always, thank you so much for being here. Whether you're new or have been walking this creative path with me for a little while, your support means the world, and I'm so grateful to have you here. Right, let's get to the episode. It's amazing, isn't it? And you'll vouch for this. Action leads to momentum, doesn't it?
Yes, that's a great way of putting it.
What have you been up to since we last recorded the episode?
So I took a bit of a back seat from teaching this year, which is really interesting. I needed time, I realised, to really work on my business and growing it. And there were two key projects that I wanted to bring forward. I didn't know which one was going to take priority, but one clearly did. So I purposely decided to reduce my teaching hours because I found year in, year out, I wasn't being able to move on with these other things because I was so busy teaching. So yeah, that was quite different, quite a pay cut. That wasn't so nice, but it's one of the things you kind of have to swallow if you want to be able to explore. And I'm enormously lucky that I have a husband who's able to take the hit on that and support us through. And he knows that it's going to lead to better things in the future. So the first thing, which is an idea I've had for a few years. So one of the things I've been doing is been doing peripatetic speaking assessments.
Okay, tell me more.
So it's largely at independent exam centres, and there are quite a few these days in the UK. They're really for home educated children, but certain centres maybe that are a lot of post-16 centres, I think, who maybe aren't an exam centre themselves. Also for adults who've decided they want another qualification or want to resit something to go back. So yeah, I joined them actually right back at the start just to do a few speaking tests for them. And over time, I've really got to know them, really got to know the staff at the different centres. And something that I kept being told was, oh, we had somebody in the other day and they were awful. They didn't know what they were doing. The candidate had to tell them they'd not completed the test properly, and just think this is awful. You know, a lot of these kids in particular are homeschooled because they can't for whatever reason cope or access mainstream education. Some of them it's because they have sporting or dance or theatre pursuits that take up, you know, a lot of their time, and so they can't attend school. And then they're going to have their test done, and it's so unfair because firstly they've got a stranger, whereas everyone else in the country has got their class teacher that's worked with them for 2 years. And then, you know, they might have a situation where they're not even led through it correctly or supported correctly. And so that became sort of a big thing for me. But there were also, the other thing the exam centres kept saying to me was, do you know anyone that speaks Japanese, Mandarin, Bengali, Persian? And I joked to them a couple of times, well, maybe I should set up an agency to find these people, because actually I'm not bad at finding people. And I do have a broad network. So I did that. I set up an agency.
Of course you did.
I thought, why not just give it a go? Just see what happens. You know, I set up a tutoring agency. Let's see how it plays out. So I put the proposal to the operations manager, the chain of exam centres that I've been working with, and they loved it. And so I went with it and recruited. And I've had to find sort of ways in. I started off in a lot of the tutoring bases I'm in, places where you're allowed to recruit, and posting for a lot of those. And I got a lot of people through that. And then I've just been joining Facebook groups in different areas to like source particular speakers. So this week I had someone come through and it was the Bengali speaker, which I don't have anyone on my books. And I often get people that are interested.
Wow. What's the agency called? Is it part of Languages for All, or is it a
Yeah,
completely
it's
different
part of
thing?
Languages for All, the agency. I've stuck with bringing it under that umbrella.
Yeah, that makes
It
sense.
made a bit more sense than setting up something different, because it's still me that's, that's at the top operating.
The top,
Yeah.
absolutely. And for those listeners who perhaps didn't catch your first episode, one, make sure you go back and listen to Jenny's episode, Speak to the World. But do you want to explain a little bit about Languages for All and how you meandered down the path of no return, it sounds like, and find yourself in this clearing of, creating a business?
So, I mean, it came as a bit of a shock when our beautiful school was closed down. But I had for several months already been thinking about my escape from education, not because I hate teaching or because I even hated the school or anything like that, but because I was struggling within the confines of the system and the lack of creativity and the perpetual pushing out of the arts subjects, which was where my heart has always lain and where my passion firmly is. And so I'd start to think about what other options could I have. And then when the school closed down and I was made redundant and there was no job to apply for, I thought, right, I'm going to take the plunge with the support of my dad, my mentor, and one of my best friends who also runs an education business. And my husband, who's been wonderful, and my kids, like all my family have been so amazingly supportive behind me. And I started out just private tutoring, just on my own, dabbling in all different ages, quickly learnt what worked, what didn't. And then I decided I needed to take on some other tutors because there was too much for me. So I started to explore that. And I've got a lovely team of tutors that I keep adding to over time as I need to. And yeah, I've explored quite a few things. I run some adult classes in person. They're actually leading on to
Oh,
more.
little
Oh,
doggy.
sorry. I also do dog boarding because,
Oh, dog boarding now.
yeah.
I'm not editing that out.
Dog
It's
boarding.
adorable.
Well, we have 3 dogs, and so, and I would get more, and my husband doesn't want more, and I don't blame him, he's right. But in my heart, I just want a house full of dogs. So, yeah, we do dog boarding. It's one of our visitors that's outside right now yapping because he wants to come in.
Oh, that is so sweet. And the thing is as well that you've mentioned there is that you weren't doing this on your own. You had the support of your friends, your family, mentors. And I think for those of you who are listening who perhaps feel like you're going it alone, find those people who will cheerlead, those people who are going to spur you on, inspire you, stick with the show because we're here to, guide people through the wilderness of creativity. And you've really gone through a process, I think, of self-discovery, Jenny, I think, and your confidence is so different from what it was when you were in the classroom.
I think, my ability now to recognize what I am capable of, that for me has possibly been one of the biggest discoveries I have made, and through this entire process, and realizing that I can have so much more faith in what I'm capable of than I ever believed before. And it's forced me to stop seeking reassurance from others and start actually seeking it from within, and realizing that my own self-confidence is everything that matters, which that discovery has led me on to realizing that that's what learners need. So it's probably the most important thing that learners
Yes.
need, especially when doing something like learning another language, which forces you out of your comfort zone to put yourself, in those awkward situations where you've got to try and
Mm,
speak it and you're worried you might get it wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, and so having good inner confidence is massive there, so
Mm.
important.
And I feel like so often we as educators in the classroom, we are told that this is what we're doing. But on a much deeper level, we're probably unraveling a lot of that through the rigidity of it all
The assessment.
and the assessment. Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
That for me is probably the biggest bugbear I have in education, because especially, and I'm sure you find this too, my subject is not as measurable as others. You can't do a test and say this is where you are in a language. You can on a very basic level, but the truth is, to measure progress, you just need time, and you need to see how you feel about it and how the outcomes are in terms of how that communication is going. And I hate the level of testing in schools. I hate it in education. I think it's detrimental to learning.
Yeah, and it's why so many people are choosing to leave a profession that they love, that they have dedicated their lives to. But something that I love seeing on your socials is the amount of travel that you do during the summer holidays. And I think, when we're talking about assessment, actually we're missing the context part of it, aren't we? So using that language in context, that is where the real progress
Yeah,
happens, isn't it?
absolutely. I mean, I've been to France 3 times this year. And then this summer, France, then Spain, then the Netherlands, all of which offered me something totally different. I mean, France and Spain, those are 2 languages that I have been really pushing myself to improve over the last couple of years, and I really felt it. And Spanish was a big test for me, because I hadn't been to Spain for so many years. So that was really big to actually try that out, and realised I was so much further forward, that I really understood everything, that I was able to say everything I wanted. It was fantastic. And very few English speakers where I was as well, in Cantabria. I don't know if that's, common to the whole of Spain, but it was very obvious. And actually, it really helped on several occasions that I was able to speak Spanish, because they didn't always have good enough English. And my kids also used their Spanish and loved it.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's huge. Like me, they think it's normal. I grew up thinking it's normal. Every adult speaks another language, right? Because my parents did, and then discovered, of course, it's not the case. Well, my kids think it's normal. They think multiple languages is just normal life, because it's what I do. And their dad also speaks more than one language and always has a go wherever he is as well. So
And that's it, isn't it? It's about giving it a go, about putting yourself in a situation where you have to apply what you know, figure it out, you muddle your way through, don't you? And creativity is a little bit like that as well. You don't always know what you're going to be able to produce, but you have the tools.
And I think as a linguist, you need to have that very open, creative brain. You need to make sure that that's the way you're approaching it. Because when you've got to try and just get through, then you've got to think on the spot. You've got to manage. And I think 2 of the people that I would really hold up as shining examples of this, the 2 of the most creative people I know. One is my brother, who has GCSE French, and years ago I remember being in France with him, and I have A-level French, and I've always kept it up and taught it. And we were doing this treasure hunt, and we had someone in our team that was a friend of our parents, and she didn't speak English. So we were trying to get by in French. Now, my French is much higher than my brother's, but he was conversing way more than me, because he just does. He just goes for it. And he's able just to think on his feet. And he's an artist. I mean, he's also many other things, but he is at heart an artist and a musician. And those have always been his passions. And that really shone through. And the other person, my husband, who he was the one that really made me go, why am I holding back? This is ridiculous. And we were on a campsite in France. The kids were very young. And I came across him speaking in German to our German next door neighbours on the campsite. He was making all sorts of mistakes. I was cringing. He was using the informal form of you, not the polite form, which I know is correct. And then I looked at the German guy who was chatting with, and he was beaming with joy. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. Here I am, overthinking everything, desperately worried I'm going to make a mistake. And these 2 people that speak a lower level of the language than me just launch in and get a fantastic reaction. I need to do that too. And so I started from that point to just make myself deal and make conversation with people. I've been doing that for a number of years now in France, and it's really paid off. But the really interesting one for me was the Netherlands this year, because I don't really speak Dutch. I did a little bit before going out there. One of our band leaders, who's also a very good friend of mine, decided to learn Dutch for it, because he's going to be up on stage conducting, and he was going to be introducing things and speaking. He wanted to speak to the audience in Dutch. And it was phenomenal to watch. And I actually took a photo of one person's reaction, because he beamed with joy at hearing an English speaker make an effort with his language. It was a really special moment, and they loved it. The response we got, they loved the music as well. So I probably want to explain how I was on a band tour.
I was going to say, talk to me about that, because there's two things though that I just want to pick up on. One is the connections that we need and that we build with our fellow humans through language. That is just so special. And two, in building those connections with other people, we can then also connect to ourselves. Yeah, there's a beauty in there. There is an artistry in there, I think.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think it's really, it's such a scary thing to do, to stand up and speak in front of an audience anyway. But to stand up and do it in a language that isn't your own is phenomenal. He was making so much use of hand gesture and and all things like that. And the communication was just wonderful to behold. And I was absolutely captivated by the audience and their reaction. And I saw astonishment, definitely on some faces. I saw people just really responding, really loving it. They were applauding, they were smiling, and people understood. There was the comprehension as well. And I think that speaks volumes about what we need to do as a nation to build those bridges that are sadly really, really being destroyed by current situations, not least Brexit. I think we have a poor reputation for communicating in foreign languages. And I don't think it's entirely down to the individual's fault. I actually think there are probably fewer people that are closed off to learning languages than we think, than maybe is portrayed. I think a huge amount of people believe they can't, or believe they're bad at languages. And that's where I was talking about that inner confidence before. That's something that has become a massive focus of mine when working with adults, because most adults come to me and tell me their terrible stories of learning a language previously, and how they failed, and how they were told they were no good. And I just think they hold those failures so close to their heart and believe they are bad at it, when that can't surely be the case. And the flip side of that is this belief that learning a language is something that belongs to an elite few. This isn't true either. I'm no special gifted linguist. I'm not an especially intelligent person. I've just thrown myself into it and worked hard at it because I love it, and I need to believe I could do it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the impact of Brexit in your first episode, and we talked about language learning almost being the bedrock of developing compassion and empathy and understanding of somebody else's experience. Theatre also does that, when you're stepping into the shoes of other characters and understanding their story. So I think language and theatre and art really do complement each other beautifully, but they're kept so apart in the curriculum. Like there's very little cross-curricular workings, but particularly in secondary. I mean, I'm seeing a little bit more of it in primary because that seems to be the way of working. But in secondary, it's like, no, we've got to keep the subjects separate and, again, prepare them for assessments. I want to go back to why you were in the Netherlands and talk to me about your music journey, because this is also something that you've started to embrace, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been amazing. So I hadn't played the flute for the best part of 30 years. I stopped when I was 6.
Wow.
Yeah. And I could no longer continue. I'd been working towards my grade 5, but I'd chosen not to take it in my GCSE year. And then I wasn't able to continue in tuition, and so just got left. And in lockdown, I picked up my recorder again. I had a recorder and loved it. And then It was my children, really, and these friends that I've already mentioned. Chris, is one of the conductors in that band, they are a big reason I got into it. He first persuaded my son to learn the trombone, and then that we should join a local junior band, and that I should come along with him. And my son was really keen. Dougie was really keen for me to join with him, so we did, and we've been attending there for I think nearly 3 years now. And then my daughter was so inspired by this. She was learning the guitar at the time that she decided she wanted to learn the flute and join us both in the band. So they did, and we've been in that band for some time, but that's not the one we're on tour with. So last autumn, I was then persuaded to join a big and very amazing adult band in a town not too far from me called Tutbury. They're called Tutbury Bands, and they are amazing. And I joined actually with my best friend's daughter. He's a wonderfully talented flautist and linguist. So we've always been very close. She's 16 now, just done her GCSEs. And she wanted me to join with her as company. She's way better than I am, but I went, of course, I'll bridge that gap for you and be there. And so I did. And it's been amazing to have the time with her as well. And has been really lovely and developed that relationship. But going back to music has reopened a part of me that had just been lying dormant for ages, and I'd forgotten the joy that comes of sitting and playing and making music and learning a new piece and overcoming the really tricky bits. And the progress I felt myself make over the past 3 years has been phenomenal. I went from, I couldn't even remember, I could still read music, but I couldn't remember all of the fingerings of the flute and the notes. And my friend's daughter had to teach me a lot of them, which she loved doing. And then now I think some of the more challenging pieces that I'm now able to access it's been incredible. And just reminds me once again that I am a lifelong learner. Right? I've always called myself a lifelong language learner, but really I am a lifelong learner of everything. And I think it's a message that more people need to understand, that learning doesn't just take place between the ages of 4 and 18 in an educational institution. Learning is constant and ongoing and enhances our lives in so many ways. And I think, my musical journey and then seeing my children embrace it as well has helped so much too. And I often think that probably my very early interactions with music, I taught myself to play the recorder from a book when I was 6 because I wasn't allowed to have lessons in school and my brother was, and I didn't want to be left out. And so I've been reading music for that long. And that's it's 40 years, so it's a fair while. And I think that all of those skills really help me as a linguist as well. I think listening in particular.
I was going to say the active listening and
the crossover in your brain of
Yeah.
the different things you've got to do. You're reading music and you're also thinking about all of the dynamics. You're listening to everything going on around you. You're also playing the actual instrument and making sure, your embouchure and everything's in the right place. And it's so much of it is second nature to musicians. There are some absolutely incredible musicians in that band, amazing, and the ages span from 10 is the youngest to, I think there are people in their 80s in there. So it's, and it's a great big happy family that's just an absolute joy to be part of. And it's bringing together that community. And then we get the opportunity to go abroad and take the music abroad and embrace new communities. And we actually closed the Delft Jazz Festival, which was just what an experience.
Wow.
It's been amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about the part of the brain that's linked with language learning and music. It's the same. Is it the same part
in
of the brain?
The same area of the brain, yeah.
Same area of the brain, which, you find those crossovers. But I mean, even things like, positioning of the tongue in certain sorts of languages and, playing a musical instrument and, all of those things that you have to contend with when you're in a situation where you're learning language or using a different language. So I can definitely see those crossovers, and I'd definitely encourage anyone who's listening to look at some of the research out there about the correlations between music and learning language and the benefits of it for your brain, long-term brain health. I think is so important.
It also gives you that feel good, that, that feeling we love of I am really doing well here and I'm really enjoying it. There's nothing like that rush, I think, of just giving you that lift, that boost of, yeah, I nailed that really challenging part of the music. I finally understand that grammatical concept that's been bugging me for ages, or I remembered those words that I've been, it's a real boost. So learning through life is, yeah, it can just feel really, really good.
What's your favourite piece?
My favourite piece is Floral Dance, which I just have wonderful memories of Terry Wogan as a child, and that. But it's also it's been a real labour of love for me because it's really challenging. It's got 5 flats in it for the flute part. It's quite a lot
Oh,
to think about, and it's fast paced. So I spent the summer really practicing that over and over and over again, and really felt like, yeah, I got it now. Which is that I love that feeling. But we do a lot of movie themes as well, and musicals. Those are often my favourite ones, are the ones musicals, because I adore musical theatre, which is helpful as both my kids are massively into it. So I spend a huge amount of time in that whole sphere. Yeah, but all sorts, really all sorts. We had practice yesterday, and we're starting to prepare for Christmas now, which is a bit odd in August, but with a lot of
but
stuff
you
on
have to.
Christmas. You do, because you've got to practice and prepare. So yeah, real mix, always interesting.
And you've always been so supportive of your children who love the theatre, love the musicals and performing, and you are an advocate for the arts as well. Did you manage to get to the theatre over the summer holidays? Did you venture out?
I have been to, so many things this year, but I think the summer holidays has actually been a bit of a fallow period for me. Oh my, I've got loads booked coming up. So
Have you? What are you going to go and see?
I've got The Great Gatsby. We've got Everyone's Talking About Jamie. We've got I know I'm missing. Oh, To Kill a Mockingbird is also coming up. So it's
Oh,
the 3 that I can remember at the top of my head. I am surrounded by friends who also love it, who are forever messaging me going, "Do you want to come to this?" And I go, "Brilliant, yes." And so, I've always got things booked in. But this year alone, I have seen And Juliet. That was thoroughly enjoyable. Really feel good. Really fun. Would definitely recommend it. Had a vague idea of what it's going to be about, and it had so many lovely surprises. So yeah, it's really good. What we saw in Spectacles, um, which is done at GCSE, but I thought, well, Dougie's just checked his GCSE options, so let's get him a head start. So yeah, that was good. And I'd not seen it at the theatre; I've only seen the film and read it. Yeah, that was a really, really enjoyable one. I'm totally forgetting loads of things. I know my friends, if they're listening, are screaming.
what about? But the thing is, if it's part of your calendar, when you're going to the theatre so often, you're bound to forget what
Yes.
you're going
And
to
then, of course,
see,
there's
and
the things that my kids do, as well. So they always do a summer concert with their musical theatre group, and it's a bit of a mix of lots of different songs put together by one of the amazing adults that run it. And an absolute takeaway for me was a 15-year-old girl, I wanna say, doing My Shot from Hamilton, and it was flawless. It was acted, it was sung, rapped, danced, and just incredible. And I just remember thinking at this time, this is astonishing that she can stand up on stage and do that. That's quality. It's amazing what young people have got in them and how it can be brought out by
because
theatre.
they feel so at home
Yeah.
in that space, they feel seen.
The couple that run the musical theatre that my children go to, called Rising Stars, do it voluntarily. It's something they set up for young people, and yes, there's a price, but the price covers the costs. And they rely on other volunteers to help out. And what they produce, I mean, you saw the snippet of Newsies. It's absolutely phenomenal what they get those young people to do and how those young people feel about themselves afterwards. I have watched my daughter in particular grow enormously in confidence. She had got so much out of that theatre. Just everything she's done, and gradually growing and moving towards wanting to do more things. It's absolutely amazing. And it's helped her enormously in her first year at secondary school, that confidence that she's got from it.
Exactly. And it's not just about, preparing them for a career in the performing arts. Not everybody can be a star. We understand that. But actually, if she takes that confidence into her GCSE exams, if she takes that into her interviews, just knowing her self-worth, so much of it comes down to that, I think.
I think for me, that's always been a really amazing one. Some of my most amazing speaking tests have been with the dramatic students, with the ones who do drama, that do lambda, especially. And I've often said to them, especially if they're very nervous, just get those skills in. You're learning a script, and you're just performing it. Just become. I am name of child performing my GCSE French exam. And actually, it's really works. You can see they've gone, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can do this. I can really." Yeah, and there's so many secondary skills, soft skills, I don't call them what you like, but just extra skills that are involved in learning languages, doing drama, doing music, doing art, doing DT, all of those things. There's so much more than just what people think is the end product, i.e. the grade that comes out at the end. And those things, they are measured by people and they are held in high regard by people, particularly languages. A lot of the employers really, really do understand what that means and what they're getting in a person that has studied languages. But there are sadly too many people that just focus on what is this going to give me later on in life. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, oh, I'm never going to go to Germany. What's the point in learning German? But there's so much point in learning German, not least it makes you more employable. It probably gives you a head start of getting onto any degree course at the top university. And it's also the fact that while you're learning that other language, you are enhancing your listening skills and your communication skills. You're broadening your cultural knowledge and understanding of the world around you, and thus opening your mind up so much more, as well as having to learn more challenging things like long, complicated sentences and complicated grammar. There's just so much to it. Just the simple understanding of R's, always a good example, of how an R is pronounced in each language just gives you an idea of the differences between cultures, right? Because sometimes we just use our lips. The French use the back of their throat, and the Germans are similar without quite such a guttural
Let me
sound.
hear it. Let me hear it. I want all of the examples of the R.
So Y is quite a good one. Pourquoi? Pourquoi? A German Y, yeah, you've got a warum, and it's still the back of my throat I'm using, but it's less guttural. Whereas the Spanish is right, the tip of your tongue at the front of your mouth. So porque, porque, and then just wiggle your tongue. Or perro is a really nice one because that's a double R. That means dog. Whereas in English, we say R using just our lips. We say that's right, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So all of these things come into learning a language, and that just it opens your brain to the possibility that different people use their mouths and their throats and their tongues in different ways while they're speaking a language. And just that sort of thinking does so much to open somebody's mind to the possibilities of differences and accepting those differences and understanding them. And that it's all possible and achievable.
It's all possible. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, if you're sitting here listening and thinking, oh, you know what? I've always wanted to learn Spanish. Well, find a class, get in contact with Jenny and find out if there's any local groups that you can attend, because it's, why wait? Now is the time. I was wondering, Jenny, if obviously it sounds to me like it's been a really fruitful summer. It's been a really enjoyable summer. Have there been any sort of challenges or moments where you kind of have had to take a step back and reassess and kind of go, oh gosh, I wasn't expecting that, and readjust? Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's not all easy, is it?
I've had to push myself a fair bit this summer. I mean, we had so many issues actually even getting because
Oh,
we
did
had
you?
car trouble. But
Oh,
anyway, that's
no.
a totally different story. Yeah, so I had a really interesting exchange in a shop in Spain. I had to really push myself out of my comfort zone. My daughter bought something and then was worried that it wasn't the right thing and maybe she'd been scammed and she wanted to return it. And it was just a little
Oh,
local souvenir shop. And I hate causing a fuss. My husband would be
I know
straight
you
in there.
do.
I doesn't speak Spanish, so couldn't have done. He wasn't even with us anyway. So I was like, well, I've got to do this for my daughter. So I sucked it up, went in there, used my best Spanish, and actually it worked. And I wasn't so worried about the language, I think, but I was more worried about the reaction I was going to get. I had to walk in there going, I know what to say, but I've no idea what they're going to say back to me because I've never dealt with this
Right.
scenario before. And that's always an interesting one in languages. You never quite know, of course, when you open your mouth and speak, what's going to come back at you.
Yeah.
And then I had an experience on the way to the Netherlands where we ordered some food and everybody was waiting. We were kept waiting to the very, very end. And eventually we got the food and he said, we'd ordered some chicken wings. And he said that they didn't even have enough for one full portion. We'd ordered two. And I said, well, I think
Oh,
you need to give me a
no.
refund. He said, it's not my
Yeah.
problem. You have to go over to the cash desk over there. This was all done in French. We were actually in Belgium at the time, but it was Flemish
Okay.
speaking Belgium. However, I went to the cash desk, I explained, they tried to fob me off and send me back, but I really stood my grounds again, which everyone who was with me couldn't quite believe because I don't ever do that. I'm a bit of a wimp. But I pursued it and I did get my partial refund. And then I did all of this in French and I was very glad. And I was thinking, I know there's nothing wrong with my French. Why is this guy not understanding me? And then afterwards he said, oh, you speak English. I speak much better English than my dear French, but your French is
Oh,
great.
my goodness.
Like, that entire interaction. I was aware the entire coach was waiting for us and that we were going to be delayed getting to our hotel. Yeah, and all because of the
Wow.
language
All because
barrier.
of a chicken
I was using
wing
the wrong language.
and the fact that you could have
Chicken
spoken to
wing.
him in English. But you know what? The funny thing is there, though, is it wasn't anything to do with the language. It was actually about you standing your ground and using your voice.
Yeah, which 2 years ago, not a chance. Probably even a year ago. There's no way I would have done that. But both times I had a young female with me, well, my daughter, then my honorary goddaughter, as I call her. And I often feel like I've got to be a role model for these young women. And I want them to be strong and I want them to be heard. And if I hide, then they're going to learn that hiding's okay. So I've got to push myself forward and I've got to do that.
You
And I
can.
can.
You
Of course
can.
I
Do
can.
you ever imagine walking back into a classroom in a school setting and how different things might be for you?
I do imagine going and doing the supply, and I have actually signed up and would really like to do that. So that's a nice idea. Oh, I don't know. I think I worry about I would be going backwards if I were to do that. And I also have the fear that if I were to get back into a school, immediately I would have everybody pressing on me what must be done. This is the route you must follow. This is the path that we tread here. And I can't imagine doing that ever again now because I'm building my own path here for language learning of the future. And I'm taking the bits from the education system around me that I love and ignoring the bits that I don't love. And my next big project for this year is to help more adults learn languages. I a few months ago revisited my mission statement that I wrote when I first set it up, which was I firmly believe that everyone can learn another language, and I want to help as many people as possible to learn another language. And I then started thinking, well, at the moment my reach is small. With what I'm working with locally. And especially when you do one-to-one, your reach is small. So my next big project is I want to build online courses for adults that meet somewhere in the middle between apps and teacher-led classes. Because apps are great and there's loads out there and you can, the real positives are you can access it whenever you want. you keep yourself going and you're motivated by all those little motivational things on the apps. You can interact with friends and family and, engage with them and be in competition with them. And you are learning. You're definitely getting something out of it. I don't believe we're ever going to be fluent learning things just through an app. Um, I know very few people who really learn a language that successfully through that. But I think they're brilliant. And so I would like something where adults can learn in their own time in bite-sized, chunk-sized lessons, but make those lessons really meaningful, part of a progressive course where they're gradually going to be able to move on and feel their progress, but also ensuring that they've got the things that they need for language learning. Lots and lots of comprehensible input at the start, lots and lots of listening practice over and over again, lots and lots of moments where they can speak, whether reading off or repeating things, but in a way that enables them to feel good about what they're saying. So that's my next thing is it's a course or courses long term to support adult language learners with I think we'll be starting with Spanish. And giving them the option to attend live sessions for speaking
Fantastic.
practice and teacher input.
And my brain just instantly went to, well, Jenny could do the courses and there's an app attached to it maybe and people can dip in and out. But then there are trips, there are retreats, there are, opportunities for these learners to come together in a space and maybe linked with music. I don't know. There's so
Now you're talking.
there are so many opportunities, and I think we need time to sit and daydream and wonder and to sit, to collaborate, to discuss, to meet with, other people who are also trying to do something different,
And there are so many out there. I joined various courses this year, but the one big one that I joined that was a paid for course has been fantastic in helping get me where I am, has led to some incredible collaborations. In fact, I think I even sent somebody
Yes,
your
you did.
way because it works both ways. And you find people post and say, "Oh, this is the sort of thing I'm doing," and instantly I went, "Oh, well, I know somebody." And that's happened to me as well. Oh, I know somebody that would be a great match for you. And it's amazing because there are actually so many people out there now who are making their own way somewhere in whatever sphere they're in. And they are trying to get something going. And it's to help people. Every time it's to help. Yes, it's to make money as well and be successful, but what they're trying to sell is their knowledge, their wisdom, their way of doing something that has really worked for them to enable others to do it too. I spend a lot of time in sort of expat groups these days online. And there's some brilliant people out there just willing to offer advice to people that want to move abroad, move to France, move to Spain. Which has also led me to realizing that they're tightening the regulations, particularly in those two countries, for language learning and insisting you certain levels. So the courses I want to run will be in line with that. Yeah.
Why?
I think there's been a lot of talk of it in recent months because they have a lot of expats that move over there and don't learn the language and don't integrate. And come unstuck. It can be really difficult. My parents had to help people through some very challenging situations. Some run of the mill, buying a house, not run of the mill, but also death and negotiating that and financial issues. As French speakers, they were able to do it, but it's a really difficult thing. So it's all well and good to think, well, I can go and live there and I'll be able to survive, or I'll learn the language. But actually, the governments are saying, no, you need to have a level before you come here because it is the way the country functions and it works.
Well, it's a bit like, some people, I guess, would want their cake and eat it. And it's, all the benefits of living abroad, but not really investing.
But I think a lot of people go with the intention. They have really good intentions to learn the language. I think it's just not that accessible. And I think language learning is something that's not been accessible enough for people for too long. And I think it's something that's got to change. We've got to really all start believing that we can do it. And if I can do it, anyone can do it.